Ever wonder what it really takes to tune an aftermarket ECU on a Cummins? This week we're answering your questions, everything from fuel limiting to the tune we started with, whether the ECM needs constant tweaks, and even thoughts on RusEFI open source. Plus, does the ECU control our max RPM? And stick around for the comment of the day. It was a real light bulb moment for one of our viewers, which was really cool to hear about. Let's get into it. Your questions answered. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's question and answer. What do you think of that last video? I know probably a few heads smoking after that. There's a lot of information to take in, but a lot of great questions as well. So we're going to get right into those. First one up is from RW Netrath. If enabling the auto starting when cam sensor faulted is useful to get you up and running when the sensor or its feed to the ECU has failed, i.e. an emergency situation, is it possible to have that setting linked to a physical control like a knob or a toggle switch so that you don't have to connect to a laptop, pull up a map, etc.? Could this be done for any other setting that you might want to temporarily change dependent on the needs of the moment? Well, that's a good question. The auto attempt to start when camshaft sensor has failed option is automatic. You don't have to hook up a laptop to do that. You just let the ECU do its thing. If it senses that cam sensor's failed, it's just going to go ahead and apply that anyway. So it's not something that you have to worry about. Now, as far as other settings, it really kind of changes. There's multiple settings in the ECU that are real-time swappable. Usually that's only related to tables and such like that. Any of the main settings usually are going to require a power cycle to change, and there's no way to on-the-fly change those with a switch, at least not with the standard software. Maybe there's a way to get in there with custom programming with the way Baldur set that up, but as far as typical ways, you're usually not going to have that option in there. Now, that being said, there's ways to work around things. Like you could set up multiple maps for, say, a temp sensor. So if you had a sensor fail, you could flick a switch and maybe just have it switch to a different map where it zeroed that out. Once again, maybe. There's so many things that you can do, and without really diving into a specific aspect of it, it's really hard to say what's available to you. Next question up is from Jeff Pesnecker. When is the final exam and when do we get our diplomas? I know a lot of information there. You guys did great if you stuck through that whole video for sure. Sadly, no diplomas. I'm not an accredited training institute, so I can't help you there, but thanks for sticking with it. Next question up is from Bankrupt. Good stuff. Love the tuning details. Regarding the fuel limiting on high intake air temps, do you think it should reduce it to below 1 above certain intake temperatures? It would really depend on the engine and how hard you were pushing that engine, but absolutely. I mean, if you had a fairly strung out engine, I would certainly recommend that. For us, we're already pretty much derated on whatever we're doing on these engines, so not really necessary. I think mainly they do it just for density changes with the lower temperatures. But as far as safety, we are so well within safe ranges on these engines, it's not really something that we have to worry about. But for sure, a good idea on some engines. Ha!
Did you get the horsefly?
Gotcha!
The only problem when the sun comes out? The horseflies come
And there are so many horseflies up here. And it's not just this bay, it's like every bay you go into, you get at least some horseflies. Some are really bad. Okay, next question up is from RVing since 2016. What kind of tune did you start with and how much did you have to change? With the number of 6.7s out there, why wasn't there a close enough tune? The biggest reason is that we're not using a factory ECM. And unfortunately, tunes between ECM manufacturers are not interchangeable. And there just haven't been a lot of people using this ECU yet for the Cummins 6.7s. There are a couple, and that's kind of where I got this map from. But it's not the same. And unfortunately, you know, how do I put this? With the Cummins QSBs and the ISBs, so the ISBs being the truck and on-road stuff, and then the QSBs being the industrial and marine stuff, Cummins has it really locked down on their calibrations on their ECUs. There's no way, at least that I know of, I'm sure there's some vector head out there that is smart enough to do that.
I am not, to pull that file from the ECMs. You know, you can do it with the GM stuff, you can do it with the Ford stuff. The Cummins ECUs, they just have them locked down and you can't pull a map off of it. So you're always limited to what you can find either online. Baldur did supply me with some mapping from the factory ECMs, but it's really limited as to what PID values and what maps you can look at with the software that I had, which was EFI Live at the time. So it's really limited on what you can pull off of that, especially, you know, all your triggering stuff, your sensor stuff. You can't really play with that in the EFI Live stuff. So basically, I was limited to what I could find from other guys that were working with this ECU. And there was some stuff that Baldur had on his website. He does have a lot of base files for a lot of engines. You just have to basically find and see if yours is in there. Unfortunately, the stuff that he had online at the time was only for the 5.9s, and there are some differences there. So yeah, basically not a lot of base maps that I could go with, basically depending on the guys that have already done them. And the guys that have already done them, or the gentleman that I was working with, he does a lot of high-end race engines, so his mapping is not really stockish. It's more high-strung for those engines, so not awesome for what I have to do. So there was a lot of tweaking that I had to do to kind of bring that back and make sure it was safe for the engines that I'm running.
Next question up is from Rick H, 3694. So it would cost me thousands to do what you did because I know nothing of electrical engines. So if you do this, when it's done, is that it? Or do you have to keep tweaking the ECM all the time? On the first comment, yes, wiring in engine management and tuning engine management can be quite time intensive. If you are paying somebody to do it, usually they're going to be a specialist in it, and usually you're going to be paying top dollar for it. So it really depends on how you do it. For example, I could have run the stock sensor suite on these engines. I could have just cut the wiring where the old ECU was, repin it for the new ECU, and that would have saved a lot of time. I'm a little bit more anal with that stuff. I wanted new wiring. I wanted to lumen all up really nice and pretty. So yeah, a lot of time into that, and you really have to know what you're doing and how to pin it out. And as far as the tune goes, once the tune is in and you have a good running engine, there's no need to keep tweaking it. You'll see even OEMs, even after they spent a lot of times calibrating an ECM, they will have updates to that ECM. And 99% of the time, nobody's ever going to have that update done. It might be when you bring your truck in for service, they might flash a new tune on it just to bring it up to date, but you'll probably never need it. And honestly, for most vehicles, it'll probably never go on there. And these engines would have run fine with the ECU, with the tune that I left with, but I'm not one to leave things as is. I'm always tweaking, trying to make things better. So I do tweak them after we've left, but I don't have to. It's just because I want to, and I want to get the most of them. And I like playing around and seeing what more I can do with them, and different things that I can add. So yes, you can, but you don't have to. And we've got a question here from Jane Strutt, 7439. Oh dear, so complicated. When talking gallons, you're referring to imperial or those little ones used in the United States, USA? Yes, it's very complicated, and it can be as complicated as you want it to be. There are things that I could have done simpler, but here we are. As far as the gallons, they are the small ones. They're the US gallons because we're in North America and that's just what we work with here. And fortunately, being they're the smaller gallons, that means I'm using small amounts of fuel because it's just a smaller amount. Not that it makes any difference on the amount, but being I'm using those amounts, and it says 2.1 gallons per hour, that's actually not very much. So I'm loving it. Got a really good question here from W. Rebelda. Have you considered RusEFI open source ECU? There's a GDI module which should support common rail diesel. Some people on their forums tried but dropped out preemptively due to different reasons. The developers come off as very helpful. I'm quite sure you'd be able to get it to work and also provide a tremendous amount of value to the community by kickstarting diesel support, as these ECUs are substantially cheaper than the commercial aftermarket ones. Other than that, love the technical talk through. You might not be aware of it, but I'm sure your unique content will help dozens of people to repower their boats at a much lower cost.
A used rebuilt QSB 6.7 can be had for around 3,000 to 4,000 euro in Europe. That is really cheap. I had not actually heard of RusEFI at all until you mentioned it, and I looked it up. It definitely looks like it could be a very viable option. I can't see myself doing anything with it at this point because I've already got what I've got and it's running. However, I see no reason why you couldn't go the route that you're going. There are some differences in the GDI, and usually the injectors are much smaller, so I don't know if the GDI modules are capable of running the kind of power through them that the Cummins injectors take, because these are super power hungry. But yeah, it could work as long as you have a way to change the injector timing, change your rail pressure, which should on those because they run basically like a rail pressure as well. What are the other things you'd have to worry about? Not sure if you'd have a pilot pulse injection on the GDI, so you'd probably be limited to one single injection pulse. Functional, but not quite optimal. But yeah, you could probably get it functioning reasonably. Got a question here from Liam Greenwood. Does your ECU control your max RPM? I presume, so I didn't notice the setting. Yes, it does. And I will try to remember to show you guys that in the next video. I do have that coming up where we're going to be getting into more of the not directly related to the tuning of the engine, more the limits and the safeties and the extra auxiliary output mapping that I'm doing for transmissions and stuff like that. But yes, it does. It's got its own separate setting for that. And there are other ways you could do it beyond that. So we'll get into that on the next video. We've got another question here from Liam Greenwood, and I just want to say, Liam, appreciate all the questions. I noticed that you're typically in the questions every week. We love it. Really appreciate it, and they're good questions as well. So thank you for that. So the question is your ECU different than the ones that come with the QSB engines? If so, why didn't you go with the Cummins QSB one? Thanks for doing this. It's very interesting. You're very welcome. It is a different ECU. The ones that come on the QSB engines and the ISB engines, they typically mount to the side of the engine, which for starters, I don't really like that because not only do you have higher temps on the side of the engine, you've got vibration that you have to deal with. And obviously the OEMs have figured out a way to do this and do it reliably. But anytime you have heat and vibration, those are the two enemies to pretty much anything. That's why I have ECUs mounted off the side of the engine. There are also, at least to the software that most people can use, they're super limited as to what you can do with them, how you can repurpose different inputs and outputs. So they're not nearly as flexible. So yeah, a lot of differences there. They're also typically only flashable, which means that every time you make a change to the ECU, in order to put it on the ECU, you have to stop the engine, flash the file onto the engine, which is typically like a 5-minute process, maybe more, and then relog in, see what's going on, make another change, wash, rinse, repeat. The ECUs that I'm using are 100% real-time programmable. So as I am making the changes, it is making the change on the engine. So I can change my injection timing and it's all real time. The second I hit the enter button, it goes onto the ECU and the ECU runs on those new values. To a certain extent, there are some main settings that, like I said earlier, do require a power cycle to make that change. But for all your tables, all that stuff is all real time. You don't have to do flashes. It's ready to rock and roll the second you hit the enter button. So much better for that. Okay, we got one more question here before we get to the comment of the day. Another thought, sorry, this is from Selkie Maine. Another thought, if I remember a prior video correctly, is that the ECU may not fire the injectors until some oil pressure is registered. I'm not sure if that's in play here or not though. I'll get into that a bit in the next video. If I didn't get into this video, I'll check. And if not, I'll add a bit on that. There's a few settings in there, and I can have it set up in there where it would require X amount of oil pressure to fire the engine. That being said, I find with these engines, it does take several seconds to build oil pressure, so it would likely increase crank times considerably, which really don't want on that. So I probably won't do anything with that. I'll just set my amount of time right to where I build oil pressure. So if it goes over that, it will stop cranking. So yeah, there's some settings in there, and we'll get a little bit more in depth into those in the next video. All right, everybody, thanks for sticking around to the end. We have the comment of the day here. And this is something that I've heard a lot over the years, and this is a good explanation of why. So this is from Tony B, 9261. Really enjoyed that. I'm a software and electronics guy with last serious encounter with the guts of an engine over 50 years ago. You know, kids and cars. But this episode satisfied a musing I've had for some years, namely why old school injector diesels start almost immediately, where modern crank for a few seconds or more before bursting into life. And now I know why. It's really obvious. The ECU has no idea of the engine position until at least a couple of crank rotations, and thus it is in no position to start the engine until it's worked it out, hence cranking for a while before all systems are go. Looking forward to the next installment. Yes, you absolutely hit the nail on the head. The injection pump is like the distributor on a gasoline engine, and just like a gasoline engine with a carburetor, the second you start turning over the engine, it's getting fuel and it's ready to go. Like you said, with the later model fuel injected engines, both gas and diesel, it requires that RPM and those turns to figure out where it is. And the OEMs have gotten pretty good about adding special triggers on the camshafts and the crankshaft to be able to decipher that really rapidly. So what they might do, say for example, is on the crankshaft sensor, they might put a missing gap here and two missing gaps down here, or a slightly different missing gap down here. And what it does is that now will be able to sync that engine on a half rotation. And they do the same thing on the camshafts. They put, you know, one extra pulse here and two extra pulses over here. So it doesn't have to turn near as far before it picks up that algorithm on what it's seeing for cam and crank. And they've gotten really creative with that. So you'll find the newer the engine, usually the faster they fire up. And this is really important, especially on, say, these new gas engines these days, where they're stop-start. So when you pull up to a gas or a stoplight, they shut off. And then the second you hit the gas, they fire up and start going again. They have to be able to start pretty fast for that function to not really piss people off. So they've gotten really good at it. These ECUs could probably have some of that put in. However, you'd have to have special cranks and cam sensors, like the trigger wheels on these engines, which we have what we have, and I'm not about to go start redesigning that. So yeah, that's how all that works, and that's why you notice the older stuff starts a little faster. Thanks for watching the question and answer this week, guys. Next week, we're going to get into a little bit more detail on the other stuff not directly related to the engine running. And also, we have a new blog up and running. It's onboardtangaroa.com. And we also have live tracking on there that you can follow us wherever we are, and it will show our position in real time. So check it out. See you guys this weekend.
If you want to see how this whole repower started, check out our Cummins playlist and watch the build from day one. And don't forget to visit onboardtangaroa.com. We've just launched real-time tracking and our new blog, so you can follow the adventure as it happens.